Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Bandish, founder of The Curious Mindset, a private invitation-only community for technology leadership teams powered by 64 Tech, a technology provider across hardware, cloud, and IT services. Now, while 64 Tech powers the platform, the real value of this community comes from the people in the room. Together, we are building a world where technology leaders lead better without having to figure it out alone. The Curious Mindset exists to help technology leaders become the best versions of themselves. Because the hardest part of leadership is rarely the technology, it's the people. As you all know, in this fast-moving world, many technology leaders are stuck in reactive mode, firefighting, buried in strategy decks, and chasing delivery. And somewhere in all of that noise, the space to grow quietly disappears. That's why we built the Curious Mindset. This community brings together technology leadership teams and connects them with exceptional minds who share real perspectives on leadership. No membership fees, no intrusive sales methods, just human connection. This is a space to learn, connect, and grow through shared curiosity and honest conversation. This community was born out of my own experiences. I know what it feels like to lead in isolation, and I don't want others to go through it alone. To give you all a bit more context, particularly for anyone joining us today who's not been on the origin of the Curious Mindset session, this year marks 13 years since we incorporated 64 Tech. And in the early years, I took the business to the wall 3 times. Not because of lack of opportunity, but because I struggled with things like hiring, I misunderstood behavior, character, and I didn't understand leadership. Last part is obviously still a work in progress. And those experiences forced me to rethink how we show up in the world. I've redesigned the entire company around people. We stopped behaving like a traditional technology provider and became a community-led one. And the reason I'm sharing this is that the Curious Mindset did not come from any theory. It came from real mistakes and hard lessons, and from the belief that leadership is better when you're not figuring it out alone. And this is why 64 Tech's mantra is simple: together we grow. We are a technology partner that helps leadership teams make confident decisions and deliver results, not just by technology. Together we grow means we succeed when your environment, your people, and your strategy move forward, not when we ship a box. If you believe in what we're building, please stay connected and share it with others. This community grows through invitation and reputation, and it only works when we build it together. Our community is also on WhatsApp, making it even easier to stay connected and continue the conversation. Please use the link below or contact Bryony directly to be added. Now, it's my pleasure to hand you over to my team working away in the background, our host, Andy McMenemy, our resident technology leader co-host, Steve Maxwell, and our very special guest, Anemari Fiser. Thank you.
Bandish, thank you so much for that introduction, as always, and thank you for your consistent generosity. It's fair to say the community could not exist without, the beneficiary, being the beneficiary of 64 Tech's, generous marketing spend in the area of helping the community to grow and giving us all the opportunity to develop further by having amazing speakers like our guest speaker, Anemari, today. Before I bring Anemari on to the stage to the community, it's fair to say that she is an executive coach as well as an engineering leader and the author of Leveling Up as a Tech Lead. Anemari, welcome to the Curious Mindset. You're very welcome today, and I'm fascinated to hear your take on some of the subjects we're going to cover in our fireside discussion. Anemari, as senior leaders, as managers in the business, I guess for most people, the stress doesn't come from their lack of technical knowledge. It comes from having to manage people. We're actually in the human emotions business. And it's fair, I suppose, as we are more senior in the business, that we are responsible for achieving those business goals, those budgets and objectives through the efforts of others. What is it you found in your research for your book on leveling up as a tech lead that could help us to manage our teams less stressfully?
First of all, thank you so much, Andy, for the lovely introduction and for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. And yes, I'm totally on the same page with you. I think the complex part of tech leadership, it's always been people, no matter how much we've tried to to go in different directions. So some things that I think can help to deal with this people complex side. It's first focusing on people, right? So leading with a focus on people, on what they need and how they can work better together. So before even thinking about the tech, is just understanding, okay, how can these people actually work together and not just as individual doing their own backlog and their own things. So that's where I would start, and in focusing on, okay, how can I make sure they have everything they need in order to be effective in delivering work, and again, and working together towards the same goal. And there's a couple of things that you as a tech leader you can do to support them in that journey. First, giving them clarity on where is it that you want to go. So clear goals, clear definition on what you expect and what are the business needs, and how do them come into the equation, and how you can all work together towards that. So that's where I would start. And it sounds like a pretty straightforward things, but in my experience, this is one of the main things that tech leaders struggle with, providing that clarity and that alignment on whatever it is where we're going to.
Yeah, I guess sometimes one of the challenges with communication is that we assume the communication has taken place, right? We've shared information with them, but we don't often check to ensure that they understand it exactly the same way we wanted them to. As an executive coach, what tips do you use to ensure that your communication is clear when you're communicating with your techs?
So there's a couple of things that you can do in order to ensure that alignment. But first, it's about, in order to get real alignment and commitment, you have to involve people in the process of making decisions. So that means early on, especially when we're thinking about developers in this case, like bringing the whole team's design, developer, DevOps, whatever, like bringing everyone together from the beginning and explaining to them what's the problem you're trying to solve, and giving them as much space at least to frame their ideas and their input. The reason that I'm saying this is because that's how you're gonna it's about keeping them in the journey, and you increase the chance of them also being on board with whatever it is that you're deciding, because they're gonna be part of it. So once you have everyone in the discussion, once you make a decision, second thing, it's about making it clear and constantly iterating over it. So what I'm saying about, what I'm thinking about here, it's a skill that you can develop, which is over communication. I've seen this being very efficient for leading teams. It's annoying as hell, I have to say that. You have to keep repeating things, but it helps, right? So don't assume anyone knows. Every meeting you're going to reiterate on the goal, on why you're here, what we're trying to achieve, and keep saying it. It's what brings people together and give them the chance to not feel left out or too worried about, okay, is this the right time to ask the question? So encourage those questions at any point, and keep on answering them, and for as long as it's needed. I think it's the second skill that I would focus on.
And I guess with our hybrid teams now, where some of it is face-to-face meetings and many of them are online Teams meetings or Zoom meetings, how important is it that you encourage everybody to have a voice and to contribute?
Well, regardless of remote or not, it's just as important as always. So like I said before, if you want commitment and if you want alignment, you have to include people. Everyone needs to feel like they are part of the journey you're trying to build. And so, yes, very important. I would say, I think it's critical in making that effort. And it comes back to focusing on people, right? Like people feeling like they have that space to voice their concerns, to voice their ideas. And in the end, you're still going to be probably most of the time having to make decisions. Maybe they are not necessarily make everyone happy, but the fact that you listened, right, and that you considered all those concerns is going to make, again, people to be more on board with whatever the strategy you're going to go for. So, yeah. That's where I would start. I think that's base tech leadership, to constantly focus on bringing people in the journey.
And I'm mindful of the fact that, some of our tech leaders may be relatively new to their roles, or they have been promoted recently and have now more responsibility. And where does it sit with you when you're talking to perhaps members of teams that are introverts and don't feel very confident speaking up? How do you offer feedback when you maybe sense that somebody has some great insights, but they just don't have that confidence to share them openly? What sort of feedback do you give to them? How would you use a mechanism of feedback to share that with them?
Okay, so first I'm hearing two questions here. I'm going to answer the first one first, which is, okay, how do you make sure these people are involved, and how do you keep them, how do you get their input if they are not feeling comfortable to share in the big groups or when they are put on the spot? So feedback is one of the tools that you can use, going to them and saying, hey, look, I would love to hear more about your ideas, like your input, and just kind of even sharing how that might impact positively or negatively. The fact that they are holding back or they are not contributing can help. So when we're looking at feedback, it's all about expressing people the impact. And why is it important for you that they share? And that's because you want to hear their ideas and you really believe that their contributions are useful. And it's a shame for you and for them if they are not bringing that to the table. So I think that's first. Second, it's continuously, once people start opening up, you have to continuously reassure them and encourage them to continue doing so. So I really love the idea that you brought to the table in last meeting. So it's a continuous effort, this feedback journey, what I'm trying to say. Second, some other tools you can install from the beginning in every decision process that you're going for is to have different ways of gathering input that would adapt to multiple styles of people, preferences, and personalities in the room. And that means maybe not just having a group discussion. There are so many ways you can get input. You can have anonymous forms. You can have just a simple board in the conversation, and this way the conversation becomes about the topic, not about the person that brings in it. You can have like previous one-on-one conversations where you get people's input and then you bring it, like, hey, these are the ideas that I've heard, and so it comes from you, so people are maybe more open to kind of discuss them. So it's all about creating a space in which people feel comfortable sharing. And again, for this, it requires effort. I do have to say, it's easy to just jump in a call and say, wait, if you have something, I'm here. My door is open. That never works, as we all know. So it's about doing that intentional effort to put all of these tools and listen and use all of this input in order to bring it back. And that's how you build their confidence to kind of start, because it's a trusting, right? Start building that trust and then feeling more comfortable to share.
And also, I guess, for the tech leaders themselves, building their confidence and having that feeling of being competent in the way that they are managing their teams. And we're all going to receive a copy of your book. And I'm curious to understand whether there was anything in your research that sparked a light bulb moment for you on these subjects.
On the subject of confidence for tech leaders and building that up. Yeah, definitely. I think so. The majority of the tech leaders that I work with on a daily basis in trainings and coaching struggle with confidence. They feel like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right decision? Am I making sure everybody is included? So it's a continuous struggle with themselves in making sure they're doing the right thing. These are the people that care, right? So I do have to say it's very important that the empathy is there. So coming back to your question, some things that can help first is understanding your strengths. And this comes with building confidence 101 is understanding what are the things that come natural to you, that you're good at and that you bring to the table. And second, what are the things that you need to work on? Because we all have both, right? So most of the people tend to focus on the things that they need to learn, on the things that they are missing, on the things that they have to do better. And this is usually the feedback that we get daily. It's mostly constructive feedback. This is how you can do better. So coming back to building that confidence, it's about getting a clear understanding on what are your strengths, what do you bring to the table, and you can continuously help yourself in that direction by asking for positive feedback, by creating a culture of feedback where both these aspects are considered, and keeping people constantly engaging with people around you for that support and that encouragement. Because as a leader, like, there's a different communication that you have with different people, right? But you also need to have your support team around you that you can rely decisions on. It's not just you. I think this is the first learning that you need to have as a tech leader, is that you should create that support network around you and rely on them. So every time you feel in doubt, or it's not just you, it's not just on your shoulders, and that releases a lot of the pressure.
I guess one of the skills we also need to have as leaders is where people are overconfident and perhaps always dominating the sessions or dominating with their feedback and their enthusiasm, is how to, what's the word, mindfully close them down a little bit to make space for everybody else, right?
Oh yeah, that's a tough one, right? So that's, I guess if we're thinking about the individual that it has the overconfidence, I think it comes back to, if you care on how your message is perceived and the impact you have of people around you, it again comes back to feedback. So ask people, especially the people that you think that they might feel comfortable challenging you, I would go to them and get that feedback. Because sometimes people are not aware that they are taking over the room. That happens, right? It's not intentional. But the only way to regulate your behavior in regards to the impact on people is to get their input. That's the only way. So continuous input on understanding what you're doing right, wrong. Getting anonymous feedback is great. You don't know who to go to for getting more examples, but at least you get the hint. Because if 3 people are telling you, hey, you should leave some space for questions in the 1-hour meeting, then you might get a hint. The next step is actually acting on the input you're getting, which is the second and I think the hardest part. But that's where I would start. In regards to you being in a group where you have a leader, where this constantly happen, it's about having the courage to provide that feedback. In ways like, depending on where your position is and how comfortable you are, or bring it up to others like managers, or just kind of expressing. But again, it's not about them, it's about you. And the impact on you is that you don't have the chance to share your ideas, your input, your motivation goes down, and this impacts their business and their outcomes in the end, right? So once you tie whatever it is, the feedback or your input, you tie it to whatever, like, their interest, right? Their impact, the business impact, people start to listen more, and they start to, to engage in the message.
That's a lovely way of rounding that up. And I think that sits very well with the next question I'd like to ask you, which is around how do we stay grounded in our own personal values whilst we're perhaps dealing with a lot of business pressure and some, team dynamics in the same way we just explored. But whilst we have to manage those shifting priorities, how do we stay grounded in our values and still achieve those difficult conversations whilst we're managing those shifting priorities?
That's a hard one. I think the only way to actually understand what's the base that you're relying on is to experiment. So the reason that I'm saying this is because even your values or your default mechanism behaviors might have to change in order to adapt. And so be open to exploration and experimentation, and be open to fail and mess up. And I think this, as a leader, it's a key skill, like vulnerability and openness to failure. I mean, there are core parts that contribute to building that psychological safety that you want in a team, that you want with the people that you're working with, to actually encourage that collaboration that we've been talking about before. So coming back to your question, how to stand grounded to your values, it's first making them visible to people, like, this is what I believe, this is how I think things should be done, but being open to be wrong and maybe trying things differently, just because you have to constantly adapt your leadership to the people in the room. What might work for one team might completely not work for another, right? So if you want, but as long as you have a common goal, it's just about finding the way in which this group is going to work together to achieve it. And it might be different that you've done it in the past, but if it works, your job is done.
And I wonder whether you found that situation has more relevance for the senior leadership teams that we report to and we're answered to, because their priorities are sometimes different, aren't they?
Yes, that definitely. I mean, yeah, again, it's about the context and where you are, the the options you have and the things that you can experiment with are going to change.
And so when we think about that, and I'm fairly sure a lot of people will have experienced this in the community, how do we still remain true to ourselves then as tech leads when, how can I phrase this, when maybe the demands of the job go beyond what the job description was? So we're now outside of our remit, or being asked to step outside of our remit, and it's going beyond our job description. How do we remain true as tech leaders to our values and still achieve that?
Well, first of all, I think we're always being asked more than the job description says. That's very true for any role that I've seen in tech. We're really bad at job descriptions. So how do you stay true? I think it's first, again, getting clarity on what you're staying true to and having that base. Second, setting your boundaries. Like, what is a line that I will not cross? Third, finding those opportunities for trying getting out of your comfort zone or the things that how you're used to do things, and kind of validating if this is something that might fit into your new values or not. So it's a consistent, continuous adaptation process. But I do believe you can stay true to your base values. It's just it's just important to understand how you can apply them and how they can adapt also to the needs of the group.
And in your research for the book, Annemari, did you find that there were differences with different cultures, leadership across different cultures? Because some of our tech leaders are, Europe, Middle East, Africa. Some are over to America and Canada. How have you found the cultural shifts in stepping up as a tech lead?
Yeah, it has a big impact. Like anything, culture is always gonna be a big variable in whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. So when it comes to leadership, for sure, it has an impact. And that's why, and it's not even about you being in a certain context, but these days we're working with remote teams, having people all over the globe. So you might have people from different cultures in your team that they have to work together. And that's where actually the biggest clash happens. This is a challenge that I see, especially the remote work brought, because it's way easier to kind of have that diversity. But I think it's about embracing it. I think it's about understanding that people, like a great performance team, complements each other. So kind of what is everyone bringing to the table? But first you have to understand those differences. Like, be curious. That's where I would start. Be curious in understanding like where each individual is coming from, what are their needs, what is their style of communication, because usually that's where the problem comes from. On like, some people prefer more straightforward approach, some people prefer more like I like to call it the British style, which I know it's a little bit more not so straightforward. Actually been in a situation where I was told, okay, this was too much for how we expect things to be said. So I think it's coming back to first being aware that this has an impact on everything that you're trying to achieve, and especially getting that alignment. Second, understanding, okay, what are the differences? And third, understanding how you can adapt and how your team, because your team also needs awareness about everything that's happened. It's not just on you. So when it comes to creating that proper space, you always have to keep in mind that it's the whole team responsibility to contribute to that. It's not just you pushing forward. But yes, definitely you need to consider the culture part as a key part. And you just coming and saying, okay, this is how I do things. This is what I am. This is how I am, which I hear often. It's not going to play well with people, right? So you will have to adapt how you are based on if you really care and you want to get those results, you'll have to adapt. Now, this is where the conversation can happen, right? Like, you can find that common ground. People will also need to adapt. This is like it's a two-way process, right? So it's about kind of just acknowledging that and finding a way to resolve those conflicts or challenges together.
I think that's often about making that time for the conversations, because sometimes the meetings are inside confined timescales, and a lot of these conversations then need to continue beyond that, right?
Yes, I mean, it's the everyday work to build the proper culture in your team, but it comes in every little things that you're doing, right? This is not okay. Let's have a meeting about building the right culture. This is in every conversation, in every opportunity, even written communication you're doing to consider that and integrate it. So that's, I think, every little thing that you're doing, every moment you have with your team, and it's an opportunity for you to build that culture, and how you show up contributes to that.
Yeah, and I guess it's about ever evolving your own personal learning, isn't it? It's, every day we say in England, every day is a school day. You're always learning something new. And so I wonder, when you were writing the book and you'd done the research for the book, was there anything that you learned through that process of stepping up as a tech leader that you then sort of thought, I'll change my mind on that?
Oh, yeah. Part of the review process, actually, I had like 20 people, and I was very thorough in getting people like from different cultures, from different environments, for different levels in their tech leadership experience. The surprising part, I was getting so straightforward feedback on, oh, this is right, this is wrong, this is now that how it works in our case. I never seen it like this. And then I realized, again, I knew this, but it was just way more obvious that the context makes a big difference on how people are perceiving things. Actually, this was one of the hardest struggles to kind of, because you asked me before, how do you stay clear to the things that you believe in and the values? I had to do like a continuous work to kind of navigate and go through all of this feedback and make a decision. Okay, where do I sit after hearing all of that? So yes, I did change my mind on a couple of things, more on the regards of going the extra mile and explaining on how this might not work in a certain environment because of this and that, and using this particular information that I got from people and pointing that out, right? So I think it's important to keep in mind that whatever advice you're getting from anyone, their background, their experience, it's always going to have an impact. So you always have to take things with a pinch of salt and understand how to apply it in your context, which is part of the coaching, which I try to avoid giving advice to people only if we get in the last, okay, tell me what you think case, because I really believe each individual's case is different. Even the problem sounds the same, like just the context and the people around you create a completely different situation than what you imagine.
And as a leader, do you find then, Anne-Marie, that your people were coming to you with problems all the time and deferring them to you because you were more senior? How did you coach them through that?
So I need to get a little bit more clarity on your question. Do you mean from the coaching perspective of when I was leading teams? Like what's the angle?
Yeah, as a team leader, I found certainly when I was in a role of leadership that my team would often come to me with their problems. So almost like, if I was on holiday for 2 weeks, they'd probably solve that problem, right? But because I'm here, they're bringing it to me, which is then eroding the amount of time that I have available in my day. I'm curious about how you operated as a coaching mechanism for handing people that were trying to pass their problems to you.
I mean, it's all about being intentional on getting your team more autonomous. Actually, one of the most recurrent topics we tackle in coaching tech leaders, it's how do I let go of control and how do I make people less dependent on me, which usually they come together, right? Because the reason that I'm saying is because if people come to you, it's also because you kind of set the expectation at some point that they can do so, right? So it's a recurring pattern. They come, you answer. So one thing that I usually do with people, it's, okay, what if you just don't answer for once? Because like you said, okay, if you would not be there, they will figure it out. What if you just let it go for a day? It's very uncomfortable. People are like, but no, this is crazy. And then they try it and they're like, people find an answer. At least let them try a bit, like, because you want to get people to be more autonomous, also because it blocks their growth. This is one of the things that leaders realize, because they always come to me with questions, they never learn. They don't go to the documentation because I do it for them, right? So it's kind of, so my point is you're contributing to the circle. So, and you have more power than you think to change the culture in your team. It starts with one human, and that can be you, right? So it's about you changing your behaviors. It's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning. People are going to be like, what's happening? Because you set the different expectations, but it's going to work. So people are going to start adapting. And when they start acting, you can have a conversation and say, hey, I'm trying something new for once. let's see how it goes. Just kind of trying to help them help themselves instead you always being there. So that's where I would start to try to understand how am I contributing to the circle that I want to get out of, and what can I do in order to start making some changes, and then noticing how people adapt to that and continuing on addressing whatever comes.
And I guess that provides a lovely opportunity to step into the area where we start to praise them and lift their self-esteem and their confidence because of the results they got. They may not have achieved it to the highest level, but it gives us an opportunity then to step into that coaching arena, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, coaching as a leader, I actually got into coaching in my first leadership role. I think it's a skill. It's a skill, or it's a tool that will greatly make your life easier, will greatly help you in your leadership journey. And the reason that I'm saying this is because it's about, again, helping people help themselves without having you the pressure that you have to have the answers, that you have to jump in. So it kind of helps you detach from their pressure, from their challenges, and in the same time still be there for them. So yeah, coaching, it's like a powerful, magical tools as leaders. But I do know it takes time to develop it. And there's so many different opinions on how coaching, what it is and how it should work. So everybody's kind of trying their style. But for me, it's more about the intention of trying to see, okay, how instead of telling them, I can ask more questions and I can help them get answers without me giving them, right? So it's all about that. So if you have that intention, you start discovering, I mean, you can play with questions, you can play with different type of listening, silence. There are different tools you can try, but you start getting in that direction. And I've seen people doing this jump very quickly, and they're like, this is really cool. I don't feel the pressure anymore, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's the beauty of it.
And I guess the skill for the coach is the quality of the questions, right?
Definitely, yes. But you can start simple. Just stop asking yes or no questions. Switch to open. Do you have questions? Just say, what are your questions? It's as simple as that, like the smallest steps. And by the way, this is how you change things. Don't everybody, like tech leaders, think about big things. I need a new structure, just think about what is one thing that you can start changing and addressing, that you can have an impact on. And it's going to escalate, right? Because every little change that you're doing is going to have an impact for the good and for the bad in a way that you don't expect. But start small. That's my thought when it comes to changing behavior or impacting your team.
Yeah, and I think one of the nicest questions I heard, if I share with you, Anne-Marie, was in a coaching scenario where you're actually delegating and having recognized the person is capable and they've got the confidence and you're delegating to them, is to ask the question, what help do you need from me for you to get that done? I wonder if you've got any similar questions that you like to ask when you're coaching at a high level.
Yes, by the way, that's a great question, I have to say, because it comes back to having clarity on what is it that you can bring to the table. Sometimes people are like, actually, I'm pretty good to go. So go, Some other question is, okay, like going into, I like, for example, one framework that usually it's very easy for tech leaders to use is the GROW model for coaching. It's really simple, right? Because you go into the goal. What is it? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Which again, sounds straightforward, but sometimes I spend hours with people just trying to go in exactly what's the problem we're trying to solve, because everybody starts here. What's the goal? Where do we want to get? And then, so what's the problem you're trying to solve? What exactly are we talking about here? Why does it bother you so much? Are great questions. And then it goes more into exploration. So what have you tried so far? How can you do this differently? Why not going this path? Why is this so a big conflict for you? Have you tried, kind of these explorations spat, it's where I will go. And then it's about the last part, which is really important, on actually getting some agreement on what is it how are you going to move forward? What actions are coming out of this? What do you want to change? So it's more kind of, so this process, I've seen it's really straightforward, at least when starting with the process, because it gives people, especially techies, love a mental structure on what is it that I should follow. Now, once you do more, you will see it has its own limitation and you'll have to kind of diverge a bit, but it's a great start that at least puts you in the position of, okay, I want to get them to go through all of this process and see where it gets. Usually 90% of the chance of the cases, it kind of gets the thing done.
Yeah, and I guess that's the point there where we're holding them accountable, right? We're passing the responsibility back to them then, having established those questions. And it's now, when would you like me to check in with you? So that kind of mechanism then hands responsibility back to them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're referring specifically to the delegation process, I mean, for me, having an agreement on how are you going to check in, it's key. It's one of the first thing people miss. It removes so much pressure. You don't have to go and ask, hey, how are you doing with that task, which is very uncomfortable because you have a check-in in every 2 weeks and you can see if they need help, if they're blocked. But all of this, it's about setting expectations early on, which again, it's one of the things that makes your life so much easier. Just being straightforward from the beginning on what is it that we're going to do together, what is it that we're going to work together on, and how are we going to check in, and what happens if things don't go as planned, which comes back to always plan for failure, which I think it's a key part of the psychological safety. So yeah, it's all about being like, whatever it is that you're thinking, being straightforward and be clear with people on what we expect removes a lot of uncomfortable situation, because more of the conflicts that we put ourselves in, more of the conflicts that we have to deal with as tech leaders, we brought it on ourselves, unfortunately.
Before I bring Steve in to answer some questions or to ask some questions, not only from as a tech leader himself, but also fielding them from the Curious Mindset community, I wonder, in your engineering capacity then, as a tech leader, what are you finding is working well for you at the moment? How are you facing the challenges that you face? So
I'm currently not leading a team. I'm focusing on helping others and training other tech leaders in their journey. So I can answer from that perspective. Because to be honest, with coaching and training, I feel I get it's like a powerful tool to get insights on all of these different experiences without me being there, which I will get like just a minimum part out of it if I would be in a specific context. So things that I see people help in these crazy times we're living in. It's first being able to adapt. So developing a skill that allows you to constantly experiment and try things out with curiosity and being open to whatever comes. But second, relying on people. I mean, this always worked, and I think it's gonna stay accurate for as long as we're gonna be here, which is relying on the people around you and trying to solve whatever problem it is together and bringing them in early. I think are the secrets that stick no matter how much technology changes, and we can see changes pretty fast.
Yeah, the fundamentals are always the fundamentals, right?
Yes.
Learn to do them well.
Yeah, and don't forget about them, because I feel like we the more we advance, the more we forget about them. But it all comes back to the basic, as you said.
Anemari, thank you so much for your feedback so far. I'm delighted to invite Steve now to step forward and field some questions, and I'm fairly sure you'll have some from his own perspective. Steve, over to you, buddy.